Sheri Salata, thank you for joining me on
Hi.
Brave Middle Ground.
Delighted to be here. Delighted.
Well, that's very kind of you. I have had some audacious asks in my life, and you are one of them. And the fact that I was able to get to you and you so joyfully said yes is just when you start to think the universe is not conspiring in your behalf, then something like this happens and you think, all right, everything's going okay.
Listen, I'm happy to be a cooperative component.
Well, I appreciate that. So, for people who don't know, I'm going to introduce you in how I know you, and then there'll be other ways for people to learn about you. But you are a friend and a colleague of a friend and colleague of mine, Angela Greaser, who works with Melissa Camilleri, and the three of you have started an online platform called the Prosper Network. So
Yes, we have.
let's start with the question I start with everyone with, and then we'll move into that. And my first question then is, from your perspective, wherever you want to take this, how do you define middle ground?
Oh, I've been thinking about that. I figured you were gonna ask me that. I've been thinking about that for a while. I don't often think about that concept, and so I don't have a ready answer. Boy, in these times, isn't that an interesting focus? Um, I'm going to say this because I think it's a very challenging concept at the moment. And I think what I'm finding for myself, because I find myself not having middle ground with a lot of people.
Yes.
So, what does that require of me? And it requires a lot of inner work. It requires deep work for me. It also requires me to be very clear that I don't know everything. Number one, and I'm not right about everything. Number two.
That's hard, isn't it?
Um, Actually, I'm finding it to be a little bit of a relief. I might have thought it would be hard, but it takes some sort of judgmental burden off my back. Just to
Ah.
say you don't know everything, you just don't know everything, and you're not right about everything. So it doesn't have to be. I don't have to feel a certain way about things. I can say, okay, I don't know everything. I'm not right about everything. And at least that puts me in a more neutral position. I often find when I see myself not having middle ground with somebody that I'm out of my own garden. I like to say we got to tend to our own garden. I'm out of my garden. I'm in somebody else's business. I'm deciding how they need to see things instead of being in my garden, deciding who am I? What is my essence? What are my values? What am I? What's my course? What's my path? And how do I want to show up in a way that no matter what somebody else believes, no matter what somebody else thinks, that I am a mirror of love.
Wow. Okay. That is beautifully aspirational. I really started this podcast because ultimately I just want everyone to agree with me. I just feel like the world would be so much better. I clearly know what's right. Let's just all agree with me. Well, obviously, that's not true. Obviously, there are millions of things I don't know, don't understand, could perhaps be persuaded to think differently about. And it seemed like the best way for me to work in my own garden, to use your parlance, which I love so much, is to start having conversations with people who might agree with me on many things, but might posit a different idea or might shift the lens a bit or might be polar opposite of me. And what does that feel like to stay in conversation with someone who I have very strong feelings against their beliefs, their values, all those kinds of things. So I really appreciate this idea of, all right, why don't you just tend to your own garden? It's sort of the don't worry about the toothpick in his eye. You got a
Yeah.
log coming out
It's
of your own, you know?
very much like that.
Yeah.
You know, that's interesting because I don't often find myself in conversation with people I vehemently disagree with.
Well,
So
I
that's
don't either.
interesting.
I don't either because I kind of avoid them because it feels fruitless.
Yes.
And so here's what I can tell you. To date, I have not yet had a guest on who I know I am absolutely in disagreement with. I do have some people I am working up to inviting on.
Yeah.
I need to be in a position where I'm a little bit more modulated because I'm not interested in it being the equivalent to faux wrestling match
Right.
over the podcast air. That
Right.
doesn't feel productive to me. But
Right.
I do hope to get to that point. I think it's, if only for me, I think it's valuable and important work. We can't continue to only preach to our own choirs. That just creates more divisiveness. And I think what we really need is to look at someone and say, you and I don't agree in all these areas, but you know what? We both have a child we love, or we both have dogs we love, or whatever it
Right.
is. There's a commonality. So that's my goal. But that is, I don't think where you and I are going to go today.
No, I don't
And
think
that's
so.
good. So let's talk about the Prosper Network and what prompted that development at this stage of your life. You have
Yeah.
had this long, beautiful career.
Yeah.
You are in middle of life, not midlife, which I love. Talk about this new community that you have created.
Well, I guess it was 4 years ago. It was after my memoir had come out and I'd done the book tour, and I was getting ready to, I was launching a 12-week course, and I met Angela. And Angela Greaser, strategist, digital strategist, business strategist extraordinaire. And she came on to help me with that. And from there, because the people who were taking this 12-week course with me, which was so fun, were like, where are we going after this? And I'm like, well, gee, I don't know. I haven't even thought about it. I launched a membership for women called the Support System, which is very much focused on personal growth, living the practice life, as I say, and expansiveness and developing and creating new dreams, et cetera, et cetera. And so Angela, when I would do challenges for that business, Melissa would come on and she would coach. She would coach participants, and they came to me. When did they come to me? A year ago? It's all a blur. They came to me and said, "Hey, we have this idea. We want to partner with you in a business network for women, where women can meet one another and support one another and network together. And we can teach them how to network to scale their businesses. And we'd like to call it the Prosper Network." And I'm like, I'm in. That's great. So the Prosper Network now, picture this. There's the Sheri Salata Network. There's a bunch of free things. There's a free front porch, we call it. I just closed my Facebook community and moved it there. And then underneath that, there's two paid networks, the Support System and the Prosper Network, that are thriving. And so why did I decide to do? I'm going to be creating and innovating till my last breath, my friend. The pace of my life is different. I'm much wiser about that. But I feel like inventing and creating and connecting is a reason to be here. So I don't imagine that that's going to go away from me at any point.
Yeah. So I joined this group just a little bit over a year ago. It was a new group at the time. So I bet you and Angela and Melissa started talking about 18 months ago, if I had to speculate
Yeah.
based on my time with you. And the first thing that struck me was how active, present, and available you are. Your name carries weight and water. You're a big deal. Whether you feel like a big deal or not, your experience, your one
Oh,
degree of separation from many, many of the world's most famous people. And yet, I can get on every morning at 8 a.m. my time and meditate with you. I
yeah.
was just on with you last night
Yes.
during a Monday check in. You're there. Like, I
Yeah.
recognize the art behind you. I think about your pups that I see in the background. It's an incredible thing to have someone of your stature say, well, I won't just put my name to this. I will put my mental, spiritual, physical self to this. That
Dana,
makes this, I
you
think,
are
so
singing my
unique.
song, Dana. Dana, that just bugs me. It bugs me so
Yeah.
much. When I was like figuring out how do I want to set this up, I'd go look at other people's stuff and I'd be like, well, you're charging people money and you're never there. This is your old leftover biddly boo that you're tossing up there and calling a membership and asking them for money. So I'm not interested in that. That I'm not interested in content reshuffling and doing that. What I am interested in for my own self is really taking advantage of this moment in time where I feel like we are just on the leading edge of shifting all kinds of paradigms. The possibilities for a woman in the middle of life have never been this rich, never
Yes.
been this expansive, and I'm in it. I want to get, clean out all the dusty corners of my life. I want to take the things I've struggled with and summon that healing. I want to do the work that allows me to create the next version of me. And I can think of no better way to do that than in community. And so, really, the content is just me doing my thing, walking the path of transformation. It's
Yeah.
not a big, not a big prepackaged thing. I am saying, I think that walking this path and really, really allowing the universe to kind of join us and guide us could make for the best life experience possible. Who wants to come with?
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. It's really it's joyful, it's thoughtful, it's very present, and that's really lovely because what it does then is it gives everybody else permission to show up too,
Oh,
to
I
just
love that part of it.
just come. Yeah. So I don't only want to talk about your book because you've done many things now since the
Yes,
book,
I
but
have.
we have to talk about this book because I knew of it and then I read it in preparation for this interview. I've already texted about 75 people and said, if you haven't read this book, get the book. So, The Beautiful No and Other Tales of Trial, Transcendence, and Transformation. I This book is like a like a piece of you that you have gifted to readers in a way that very few memoirs I've ever read have. I love memoirs. I've always been drawn to them. But this memoir is so honest. It's so real. It's so funny. When you talk about getting a perm like Barbara Streisand in A Star is Born, my husband and I were in bed last night when I read that, and I laughed. He turned his movie off and he said to me, "What's so funny?" He's not American. He's not going to know this reference. So I said to him, never mind, but it's a very funny moment. I'm still laughing about
That
it.
is hilarious.
What you call your clothes. I mean, everything about it. There are some incredibly funny moments. And then there are moments where I had to put more mascara on today because I cried it all off reading about you pulling off the last two episodes of the
Yeah.
Oprah Winfrey Show. I mean, come on. And there were many other moments in your very personal life that also moved me. But this book is top to bottom, left to right, all encompassing.
Dana, that is
I loved
so
it.
wonderful. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I mean,
Well,
here's the truth. It is a very vulnerable thing. So everybody who's listening or who's watching this who has thought, I'd really like to write my story someday. And I say yes. And oh my gosh, it's really a real challenge. It's very, very hard. I was lucky enough that I had a friend who was a very seasoned, legendary book agent. She got me a contract with a major publisher. Oh, and then the pressure. I was late. I missed all my deadlines because I was like, no, no, I don't. So it feels like, because I also felt like this. If I am not saying anything that is useful to you, reader, that you can't say, if I'm either going to make you feel better, give you a warning, or you're going to see something in what I'm sharing that you can relate to that will be helpful. If I can't do that, then what am I doing? So
yeah.
it was laborious in that I expected a lot of it, lot out of it. I expected it to do a lot, and I think I would say that I'm happy with it. I think there are a lot of really nice gems in there that could help inspire somebody else.
Boy, I couldn't agree more. And I will just say, I just finished the first draft of a memoir, so I'm with you. That is the most emotionally fraught thing I've ever done because, again, nobody needs to read about somebody's life just for the sake of it. So to try to build that piece in of meaning and value is a
Yeah.
real piece while
And
exposing
truth.
yourself and
I mean,
truth.
how many
Yes.
times did you say this? Is this true? Is this really true? Is this my truth
Yeah.
truth? I mean, not
Yeah.
everybody has
Yeah.
to know everything, but it
Isn't that
is,
true?
but there's a standard of truth that must be met.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I want to read this quick segment and then I'm going to ask you to just talk a little bit
Okay.
about it. And this is at the introduction. You say, as a writer and a producer, I have honored the impactful nature of stories for a long time. But it's only now, in the middle of my life, that I understand their awesome quantum power. I can see clearly now that stories are the actual building blocks of our lives. They are the intentions of the ingredients of our intentions, our deepest desires, our requests to the universe, our hopes, our most fervent prayers. And the most crucial stories are the ones we author for an audience of one, ourselves. That's right, what we say to ourselves about every area of our lives is life and death, the difference between the joy ride and the hard road. Sheri, on paper, to just read your biography is to go, well, she's had a friggin' charmed life. I mean, come on. Everything's worked out for her. This beautiful memoir pretty clearly lays out that not everything has worked out for you, that you've had your own trials and tribulations, and more importantly, that you have had, in the midst of the highest of highs, the lowest of lows.
Yeah.
So, talk about this idea of an audience of one, what we say to
Right.
ourselves about ourselves. That hit me so hard.
So since we were in, since we had the power of thought, like first grade, maybe kindergarten for some, we start telling stories about ourselves, about our beauty, about our intelligence, about our popularity, about our worthiness, about our skills and abilities, about what we could do, what probably isn't open to us, about whether if we're rich or poor, if we're lucky or unlucky. And what happens is those stories become the truth. They magnetize events and circumstances, and they get deeper and deeper and deeper the more we tell those stories to ourselves. And those well-worn grooves become kind of the cadence, the framework of our lives. And part of that is generational. I think maybe a generation behind me are the last ones with the really bad training for women. You know, don't make a fuss, you know, keep your mouth shut, serve everybody all day long. So, the only thing that matters about you is this, this, this. So that concept of story, which is the thoughts you're thinking all the time, I'm just giving it a more interesting name. It's that tape that plays in your mind over and over, and nobody ever taught us at a young age to stop and change the story. Stop, refocus. Is that true? Change the story. We didn't have access to the spiritual training we have now, to the emotional training we have now, the emotional intelligence. We didn't have access to that. What other people thought about us meant everything, and that became part of our story. So what I see now is, and mostly I'm working with women who are, and some are much younger than me, but mostly in the middle of life and older. I just had somebody in one of my courses, the last cohort I taught was, or I guided, I don't really teach anything, was 98 years old.
Ah, that's extraordinary.
I know. Every time she showed up, I just wanted to weep with happiness. But
Yes.
anyway, so what I find, what's super challenging is that your story gets pretty locked in by 50. Your story is very locked in. And if you have not put yourself in courses, in workshops, in doing the work, and you can get so locked in, that's it for you. Now you're just waiting for the sands to run through the hourglass, because whatever you decided about yourself, that's it. Or if you decide to do the work, if you take advantage of the opportunity to be a part of membership groups like we are, where we're having conversations about things that remind us about what is your story, who are you really, what is the next version of you, can we celebrate how far you've come, can we talk about how fabulous you are, can we talk about the magic and the mystery that life is offering to you if you will just open yourself up just a wee little bit. And so it's a very different experience for women who are willing to crack open the door and say, maybe, maybe, let me stir the pot, maybe. And next thing you know, they are off to the races with exciting, interesting lives that would not have been possible had they not opened that door just a crack and started to believe that a new story about themselves and their lives was possible.
Amazing. Okay, so I want to double down a little bit on this middle of life thing, because I don't know, I'm 10-ish years behind you, so I'm definitely middle of life. You say 56. When I say it out loud, it sounds older than I picture myself in my mind, a lot older, and it looks different on everyone, I notice. I'm not talking about gray hairs or wrinkles. When I glance around at women in my age range, I can see so clearly how we are each telling such different stories about what's possible for ourselves. You can tell by the way we move, by the way we talk, and the language we use. You can tell by the way we dress. You can tell by our energy, the smile in our eyes, or the listless, exhausted state of disappointment. Some of us have clearly subscribed to the messages floating around in the ether, telling us that it's time to start winding the party down. You've been to the ball and you had your chance to dance. You've made your bed and now there's nothing to do but lie in it and accept what life has doled out. Okay, this piece knocked me sideways. In our culture, once women hit 54 years old and a day, nobody cares at all about what we think. The media industry actually stops tracking our opinions, viewing habits, and spending behavior. The 25 to 54 demographic, as it's known in the industry, is considered the advertising sweet spot, which means anything outside that range is not worth targeting. Even though we 55 plus people may finally have some money to spend or time to watch TV, they don't care. We're no longer relevant. At 55 years old, I ran a television network that, from a business perspective, could not have cared less about me. Oprah is older than I am. Imagine being the name of the network, the icon who founded it, and knowing they don't care about you either. Not one bit. 25 to 54. First of all, what a preposterous
Yes.
accumulation of years. As a 25-year-old, I was much more like my 15-year-old self than I am my 52-year-old self.
So much. Me too. Absolutely, me too. Well, isn't this interesting though? It's so funny because several years have passed since I wrote that little ditty. And the truth is, look at what's happened to the media industry. It is imploding on itself. The advertising structure from a patriarchal time is just crumbling before our eyes. There probably won't be networks at some point. You will choose a streamer and you will be your own network, deciding which channels come into your life, kind of like you do right now. Like, what YouTube people do you want to see? What is this do you want to see? So isn't it interesting that an industry that for the most part lacked a lot of vision about women and possibility is going out of style?
Well, and if you think about media from a larger perspective, so it's award season in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And if you look at the nominees, there are certainly some young nominees. But the number of women who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond, who are not just playing this sort of secondary, frumpy mother role, but who are carrying a TV show, who are carrying a streaming show, a film, a franchise, who are their own producers. I mean, it's an extraordinary time for women, and yet we still have so far to go.
Yeah, because those are the standouts. I mean, really,
Yeah.
the bread and butter is, I mean, those are 10 people.
Yeah.
You know, the bread and butter for actors and creators is all the work that doesn't, get nominated and get all the awards. And I think they would tell you that very, very hard. First of all, very, very hard if you're not skinny and if you're older.
Yes. And I think still very hard if you're not white.
Yes.
I think we are
Exactly.
still very
For sure.
much driven by that being the dominant look. I will never forget. So I'm an actor and a voiceover person, and I had an agent say to me when I was 31 or 32 years old, she said, "You're going to have such a great career because you're at a great time. Meryl Streep's career has had such a resurgence." And I said to her, I'm not seeing the correlation. And she said, "Well, Meryl Streep's just opening the doors for older women." Okay, Meryl Streep is my dad's age, which means she's 23 years older than I am. And P.S., she's Meryl Streep.
Yeah.
So Meryl Streep sits at the top of the mountain, utterly isolated from almost any other actor. And she could be my mother. She and I are not in the same category. So it goes back a bit to that demographic, 25 to 54.
Yeah.
How did that become like whatever, this is women, this is just women. This is the only period that matters. Basically, it's post-college to put them out on an ice floe. Their time has
Yeah,
come
and
and
it's
gone.
making decisions about how the family spends money and what products are bought and things like that, for sure. It isn't there is research that was created by the patriarchal structure that backs that up for whatever reason. But it was always, can you even imagine for me being in those meetings? And I just like, God, this is a disconnect for me, that it's insulting
Yeah.
And but it takes it takes a minute. That's one of the things for sure that I've really gotten out of this maybe the last 12 to 18 months in the country, in my world, in media, and in the whole thing. Don't take score too soon because change, it isn't an overnight thing. It is a 5 steps forward, 3 steps back, 2 step net gain. It's a thing. It's a process. And if you are taking score too soon and things are not going fast enough for you, and you're like howling into the wind, your life experience isn't going to be that great. So that's where we say, I'm going to make sure my life experience is brilliant because that's job one. When my life experience is brilliant, I'm putting out all kinds of positive energy into the culture and into the world. I am not going to make a decision to live a less brilliant life because of because some of the changes that need to happen aren't happening fast enough for me. So I keep an eye on things now, but I'm not glued. I am not
Yeah.
glued to news. I am not glued to news shows. I don't really watch that anymore because I've decided it's kind of poisonous to my spirit.
Boy.
It's toxic for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it behooves us all, particularly anyone in a position of privilege, to pay attention so that we can act on
Yeah.
behalf of people who can't where we can.
It's not going to miss you though.
No, it sure is not.
It's not going to
It
miss you.
sure is not.
From being in TV, I mean, I try to tell my 88-year-old father who's like, I had trouble sleeping. Yeah, did you watch that 6 o'clock news
Yeah.
again, like you always do?
Yeah.
Because I was in advertising before I was in
Uh-huh.
TV, and listen, those are a lot of hours to fill on those cable news shows. You take
Yep.
one little snippet of a bit, and you're repeating that for like 7 hours with different hosts because there's not enough things. And, we can take some credit for this as viewers. People don't want to watch the good news.
Right.
People aren't
Absolutely. It
interested in
doesn't
good
sell.
news.
No.
They're interested in mayhem.
Yeah.
And so that's why you got to take that as like a tonic. You take little bits, you check in to see what you need to know, you decide what your sources are going to be, what the input's going to be, and you stop living on it as if it's, oxygen.
Yeah. Absolutely. This whole conversation reminds me of Dr. King's line of the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward
That's right.
justice. There's a slow movement of goodness, of equity, of parity, of egalitarian, but it isn't moving fast enough for any of us, I think,
No,
who long to see it. And so our job is to be vigilant, but to not be held hostage by the day in
yes,
and day out.
that's right. And understanding that those things are only possible in a new energetic structure. So a new world must be born, which is the
Yes.
return of the divine feminine, the healing of the toxic masculine, and I'm not talking really about men and women, I'm talking about
Nope.
energy
Yep.
and the dismantling of that, of the patriarchy, and something that's just as profitable and rich and successful, but that everybody can participate in is
Yeah.
is waiting to be born.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, you talk in the book about a question that I think many of us have conversations about, and so I'm curious to get an update on it. You talk about what would you say to your younger self, and 5 years ago you said, "I say this: worry less. You're going to do a lot of things wrong, and it's going to turn out all right. But spare yourself some pain, tune into your inner compass at the start, and make sure it's pointing you where you want to go. Your dream is happiness, not just a spot on an org chart. Your dream is joy, not just fattening up your resume." What would you say today
Oh,
Sherry,
it'd be
5 years further.
yes. It'd be very similar. It would be, well, first of all, here was a big thing I'd say. What looks like the top of the mountain is just the setup for what's next. That I feel like I was just set up so brilliantly for the work I'm doing now. I would say that, which I kind of did say it's just you're in this for happiness. That is your purpose. You're in this for joy. That is your purpose. And from that joy and from that happiness and from that energy, everybody on the planet benefits. When somebody has tended to their own happiness cup, where they have healed their worthiness issues, they have found the joy in the now moment, and they're just emanating that energy, the whole world gains from that. So I would say that. I would say make your spiritual growth your priority. I would say that the three best words I've ever heard were from Abraham Hicks, and it was the only work you need to do is three words: manage your mood. Manage your mood, which is really an easy way of saying put yourself in the receptive mode. Manage your energy, because if you just leave it to what's happening externally, you're always going to be vulnerable to things that are not in your control. But your mood and your energy is in your control, and that really is the beacon for the things you say you want. So I would, this is the only conversation I really like to have. I small talk not at all anymore. In fact, if I walk into a social setting with a ton of people, I used to be really good at it. I'm terrible at it now because I'm bored. I don't
Well, the
want to.
clock is ticking.
The clock, let's get to it.
I mean, let's
Yeah.
say we really are at the midpoint of our lives and we each have another 50 plus years to live. I know how fast the first 50 have gone.
Yeah.
I don't want to waste my time on, boy, it's cold today, isn't it? Who the hell cares? Of course
Yeah.
it's cold. It's winter and I live in North Dakota. Let's find something of value,
Hilarious.
something of substance to
Right.
discuss.
Yeah, I don't think I'm in the middle of life anymore now that I think about it. I probably have 25 left. If and maybe not, but that probably is my upside. And yeah, I want them to be I really feel like I have the goods now.
Yeah.
I have the stuff. I know how
Yeah.
to make that the best 25 years of my life, to the most joyful, the most fun, the most abundant. I just say everything I know now, I could have excavated in an earlier time. So I'd say to my younger self, get yourself a coach, get into therapy, start doing this work in a serious way. Don't miss a day of meditation. Get your practices down. Let's go. Because that's what's going to open you up to these insights and the inspiration and to the solutions you're looking for. So, I know people who are doing that at 25, and I'm a little jelly.
I know, me
I'm a
too.
little jelly. I'm a
Me
little
too.
like, dang it, you're gonna be so it's not gonna be as hard for you as it was for me, because I really was like, I can do this myself, and that's the hard road.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Okay, I want to flip this question because
Okay.
I was at a talk of a friend of mine, Heather Boschke, recently, and she said this. What would your little girl self say to you about where you are today? And I'd never heard anyone flip it. Don't look back. What
Gosh.
does looking back and forward, what would she say to today's Sheri Salata?
She would say, "Wow, you did it." That's what she'd
Yeah.
say. Wow, you
Yeah.
did it. Because I remember my big question as a little girl was, am I going to be somebody? Am I going to do it? Am I going to be somebody? Am I going to make something of myself? Yeah, you sure did. You did it, Sherry.
Isn't that an interesting way to think of it,
Yeah.
because her point was often what might happen is that you will remember, oh, when I was little, I wanted to be a dancer. And so I would say to myself today, well, why aren't we dancing? But
Mm.
you get to say, hey, we did it.
Yeah.
It was a windy, bumpy path, but we did it.
Yeah.
So who cares that it was hard? You did it. And you're doing it. And let's not put it in past tense.
Well, listen, it makes me feel so good, especially when I'm talking to, women who are in their late 20s, early 30s, and they're like, God, I want to make something of myself. I just can't find. And I'm like, oh my gosh, let me be your cautionary tale. Let me be your cautionary tale. Quit trying to fancy up your business card and get yourself into meditation immediately.
Yeah. Okay, so you have made some references to your spirituality, but in my short time with you, that is very clearly front and center in your life. You talk a lot in the book about, having a model through Oprah Winfrey and the guests that she had
Yeah.
on who became important to you. But you have this beautiful section towards the end of the book that says, that is the real beauty of the multicolored woven tapestry of spirit I've come to understand, something I intrinsically felt as a young girl. There is a reason why there are so many languages and paths to source, God, the universe, or whatever may be your holy name of choice, because we are all moving toward the light, physically, psychologically, spiritually, at our own pace and in our own way. And I guess the question that I have in terms of thinking about the theme of this podcast is, I think spirituality and religion, which are both uncoupled and coupled, are becoming for so many people utterly irrelevant, and for so many other people utterly relevant. What is the middle ground of this practice toward
Yeah.
that you are talking about?
Let me think about that. I feel like the greatest thing that happened to me was to be raised within. I mean, we weren't super strict, but we went to mass every week. Have been raised Catholic, where I have a deep appreciation of ritual and ceremony. I love that, but I don't connect to it as a spiritual practice. I see it as something else. So I was left at the altar with empty hands. Like, I don't know about this. And who's this guy? Why is he the one who gets to have all you know, the power, in our church, and what's going on? So I could sense a lack of, and I'm not talking about lies and truth, but a lack of integrity in the structure. Like there was something that just didn't hit with me, and yet I had seen my grandmother with her rosary and all that, and I hit with her. So, but it didn't hit with me, and so I was really a little bit rudderless until Marianne Williamson wrote A Return to Love. And she still used the word God, which is a little tricky for me because it kind of takes me right back to Father Cull in the pulpit telling us we're all a bunch of sitters. But that book just said, oh no, this, what it really is love. We're talking about love here. And all of a sudden, there was something I could grasp onto. And then, of course, once I got to the Oprah show and Oprah's exploration and seeking nature spiritually just opened me up to all kinds of thinking, new ways to think about things. And I think when something gets your cells excited, that's a sign that there's something there for you. There's gold in those hills. So what I think about that today is religion and spirituality is definitely uncoupled for me. And I recognize that that's not true for everybody, but I kind of feel like it will be someday.
I do too.
I just kind of feel like you'll see. And listen, I don't mean that out of a smugness or holier than thou, or like I get it and you don't. I just mean like things start to happen in your life and you can see that that the ritual and ceremony, like I'm looking at my desk right now. I have some beads that I had were created for me in a very beautiful ceremony. I always have a candle that I can light. I have a couple of key photographs. I have a few crystals. I have some decks that I like to just pull a card and see, if the universe has a message for me. I find this very holy. I find this conversation very holy. And I feel like that is what's spreading. That energy is what's spreading. And so meanwhile, I go back to what I said when we first started talking. I don't know everything and I'm not right about everything. So, and I need to tend to my own garden and let people believe what they believe. And, but I must tell you, I see it. It's like I'm just in that same crowd. I was in the religiosity. I'm in the same crowd. It's just like when you start waking up to new language, to new expressions that are literally grounded in ancient
Yeah.
spirituality. I mean, there's an ancient quality to it, and yet there's a quantum quality to it. There's a multidimensional, intergalactic quality to it. It just gets so interesting that maybe there's room for for the softening of the tenets of religion to include more of the real mystery.
Yeah, that's so beautifully said. For me, because I was also raised Methodist, I was it's funny to say devout Methodist because that's not really a thing, but I was an active Methodist. I raised my son Methodist. I taught Sunday school, but it started to feel way too small for me. It felt like it was telling me about a tiny little lane or box of this is what it is. And it just no longer felt big enough. The whole understanding of faith is that we can't comprehend it. So when someone
Yeah.
says to me, "Well, here's what it is,"
Yeah.
that is the antithesis of the whole
Right.
point of it, in my opinion.
It's a little bit
So
like the
it
world is flat.
Yes. Yes. Don't tell me something that A, I don't believe is true, and B, has proven itself to be untrue in all these various areas. Sheri, the last question or the last point I want to bring up, because I could go on and on about this book. Really, 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 please go get the book, no, first of all, the title. I don't very often think about titles. When I got to what the title means, I did one of these.
I know.
It was
Because you think
such a
it's one thing.
glory. You do. It was such a glorious moment. I was so jealous that you had written that amazing moment and I hadn't for some, I don't know. It's a beautiful, incredible moment. But you also, in the same area of talking about spirituality and Abraham Hicks and seeking all of these leaders and ways, you say this, which so moved me. I carve out time for serious daydreaming as a part of my day in and day out schedule. The art of dreaming has been marginalized, sentimentalized, and devalued when it is really one of the most powerful creative tools we have. A truth I prove to myself over and over again. When I got serious about my soul, teachers, alive and dead, physical and non-physical, began showing up to provide me with ongoing illumination. Thanks to that guidance, I keep discovering new layers of the sacred, the mystical, the ultimate connection. French philosopher Pierre Teilhard de Chardin wrote, "We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience." Drop the mic, Pierre.
Yeah.
I mean, daydreaming. I think sometimes about young kids today, and I wonder what fourth grader in America can say to you, I just love to lay in the grass and look at clouds. I bet that doesn't happen anymore. And it breaks my heart.
Well, and back, listen, for my generation, it would be like, what are you doing laying around daydreaming all the time? You need to get a job for 50 cents an hour and go babysit some kids. I think, and this is something I really like to offer to women in the middle of life and older, which is it's very easy to lose your dreaming muscles because again, you've had to maneuver a certain structure and culture where you're kind of like the servant and the do everything and you're the last on the list. And so you lose those dreaming muscles get mighty flabby. And so getting into the practice again of asking yourself, if I could have anything, what would I want? Is that delicious? If I could have anything, if I could go anywhere, where would it be? If I could live anywhere, where it could be, without dousing that little bit of a dream fire with water by saying, well, I can't move and we don't have enough money and, we can't leave all these relatives here, just without just throwing the water on your own little dream fire, just training yourself to think about if I could have and what if I can have anything I want? What if I can? What is that? What if I can create a whole new life experience? What if I'm going to have a completely different, last 25 years? Maybe they will look nothing like my first 50. I'm just saying that's really beautiful spiritual work, I think.
Boy, I do too. And I like to say to people, somewhere between reality and your wildest dream is a whole lot of gray. If you never go beyond what you believe is possible, if you never imagine bigger, you'll never get to what you can actually get to because you've already limited what the
Yeah.
universe has in store for you. You've already
Yeah.
told it what you can't have. That's the opposite of
I
faith.
know. And that, I'm telling you, that law of attraction, which is, it is, you can test it any day of your life. You can test it and you can see it's true. The universe just says, yes, and here's more. Yes, and here's more. The law of attraction, yes, and here's more. Yes, and here's more. So that puts the onus on you to choose, to manage your mood and to choose. And so, when I'm in a complete and total state, like I'll do a little 10-minute appreciation practice. Like for one of my favorite things to do is to play the what's working game. Instead of, I don't like that and that, Buzzy ate my new chair and I can see that. Instead it's like, I love this and this feels good and this is working. And even if you're in a really low point, you can find something. Your lungs are working. Obviously your heart is beating. Maybe your car still starts and maybe there's water coming out of your faucet. And you can play the what's working game because guess what? All of a sudden there's going to be more stuff working. That is the magic of this life experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have to put in an aside to the grammarians listening. I realize children lie in the grass and daydream. They don't lay. So don't come back at me with that. I do know my tenses.
I
But,
don't. I'm always
well, I have to think about it, which is why I said it incorrectly and then it came to me. You know how you remember it, just as a totally
Yeah.
irrelevant side note? I lie. If it's you, you lie. If you've got a book, you lay the book down. So it's a personal versus an object, direct and indirect
Okay.
object
I
thing.
gotcha.
That's how I remember it. I
Awesome.
lie. Okay, so anyway, away from grammar. Let, if you if you were to say if you were to sit and see the real of your life, which I think your memoir has given you the opportunity to really play out your journey, would you do it again, knowing the really heartbreaking lows accompanied the euphoric highs?
No.
Really?
I'm going to surprise you, aren't I? No. That's why we don't see what's around the corner. We'd never keep walking. No, no, no. No,
That's
I know that's a
amazing.
surprise. You're very surprised by that. I know. No, no.
I'm actually really relieved by it. It's like you write in the book when somebody asked you at one of the 12 million places you've been asked, how did you manage work-life balance? And you said, yeah, there isn't such a thing. And you said, I could see all the women in the front row go, oh, thank goodness
Don't
someone's
believe in
being
it.
honest.
I don't
Yeah.
believe in it. It isn't
Yeah.
a thing, and I don't believe in it. And the same thing is true when people would say, "Do you have any regrets?" Oh, I know what the correct first
Yeah.
stage answer is. No, I have no. I have millions of them. There's
Yeah.
millions of things. Are you kidding? With what I know now, I'd go back and clean up all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
I do a lot of things differently. So yeah, that question, that's a really good question. Would I? No, no, and that's why. Listen, that is my human answer to you. That is my
Yeah.
human answer, and that is why we don't see down the path that far. There's a nebulous mist. We can like even when we're on the leading edge of living this human experience, like we are quantum, multidimensional, really understanding that there is a matrix. Even when our toes are right there, we can't see beyond the nebulous mist because you wouldn't keep going. It'd be too scary.
Yeah.
You'd be like, oh, I don't want a divorce, a betrayal. I don't want my brother to drop dead. I don't want my mom
Yeah.
to have cancer. All the things that, make up a human life. I would not say that I'd be anxious or interested in exploring that again or surviving that again, even though at the same time, I will tell you, all those experiences have enriched me for sure. It makes it possible for me to do the work I'm doing today because I understand, I have compassion, I've been through shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't sign up for it again. No, no, don't make me, can't make me.
Well, I guess that's the beautiful thing. If reincarnation is a piece of the possibility, you won't come back as Sheri Salata 2.0. You'll come back as something utterly different, and you'll
Maybe a
have new
butterfly.
experiences.
Maybe a
Maybe
butterfly.
maybe a dragonfly to
Yes, maybe a dragonfly.
wrap up your beautiful beautiful ending to this book. Well, I was both voracious in finishing this, not just because I was going to talk to you, but because I couldn't stop reading it, and I dreaded turning the pages because I knew I was going to get to the end of it. And you've done this really beautiful thing. You've made me believe that somehow you and I are friends and that you are sharing your life with me. And you've given me the gift of feeling like, wow, I could share my life too. And that's a really rare thing to do,
Yes, you can.
particularly for someone who's got a reputation on the line and whose people probably think they know lots of things about you. You really dispelled a lot of that, and that was a beautiful thing.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Beautiful
Well,
compliments today. I will receive them.
well, they're very heartfelt, and I so loved our conversation, and I know that my audience is going to too. So thank you, Sheri, and to everyone else. We'll talk soon.
Dayna, that was great.